What are some ugly facts about famous and well-liked people of history that aren't well known by the public? Gandhi refused to let doctors administer penicillin to his wife, which led to her death, yet accepted quinine to save his life. He also frequently nukes me in Civ 5, but that's another story. Till Gandhi was an even bigger scumbag than I thought. Some of this stuff you guys know about him is just odd. Sean Penn beat Madonna with a baseball bat. You beat me to it. I think the only reason he's not hated like Chris Brown is he beat the crap out of Madonna before the prevalence of the internet. On the 5th of August, 1987, actor Matthew Broderick was driving on a country road in Enniskillen, Northern Ireland with then-girlfriend and Ferris Bueller's Day Off co-star, Jennifer Grey, when his car veered into the wrong lane, colliding with an oncoming vehicle. The two passengers of the other car, 30-year-old Anna Gallagher and her 63-year-old mother Margaret Doherty, were killed instantly. Broderick spent a month in the hospital, but because of memory loss, he was unable to explain what happened. It was determined that the actor wasn't drunk at the time of the accident, and he was charged with causing death by dangerous driving, although he was eventually convicted only of careless driving, escaping with a $175 fine. Initially upset at the ruling, the victim's family has since come to terms with it and met with Broderick in 2003 to gain a sense of closure. I like this. An ugly fact without claiming that the person is in butthole. You're pretty much alone in this thread. Eddie Murphy got Scary Spice pregnant and refused to believe it was his. Then he took a blood test which proved he was the father after all, and he still wants nothing to do with the kid. In total he has 8 kids with 4 different women. Actually, he could start his own daddy daycare. It was Scary Spice, Mel B, not Sporty Spice, Mel C. Dr. Seuss had an affair while his wife suffered from cancer and depression. She killed herself and he married his mistress a few months later. This is what I think of every time someone says, those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. Grover Cleveland physically shamed a girl, threatened her if she went to the authorities, then had her publicly shamed when she had his illegitimate debauched baby. Henry Ford admired Hitler and loathed the new, at the time, Hollywood cinema business because it was run by Jews and increasing their influence. My understanding is at that time, lot of people admired Hitler. Mark Wahlberg only served 45 days in jail for an unprovoked, racially motivated attack in 1988 that left one of 2 victims blind. He was initially charged with attempted murder. Tim Allen was caught smuggling a good quantity of C onto a commercial airplane in the 1970s. Pablo Picasso had several mistresses, one of which killed herself, 2 of which became emotionally traumatized insane, and he was horrid to his wife. Vincent van Gogh didn't give his cut-off ear to his girlfriend. He gave it to a H who he became infatuated with after being a customer for a very long time. Phil Lewis aka Hooch M. Mosby was drunk driving and killed someone in the process. Thomas Edison invented very few of the things people think he did. He had a small team of people he would pay next to nothing to come up with ideas which he would then patent and take credit for. There are a fair few others I know of that I could put down, but I'm pretty sure most of them will be covered here. If I don't see any of them, I'll add them. Thomas Edison just sounds like a research professor. Bill Murray's ex-wife claimed he beat her, and he has never denied it. I would believe that. He's local to my area and I've heard mixed things about him. Charles Dickens separated from his wife after 22 years of marriage after he fell in love with an 18-year-old actress, then went on to have a letter published in numerous newspapers in which he accused his wife of being responsible for the separation and calling her stupid, morbidly depressed and a bad mother. My town has a Dickens festival twice a year. I'm bringing this one up. Ted Kennedy wasn't mentioned anywhere. He drove a car with a passenger off of a bridge into a channel, got out and left the scene and went back to his hotel room, fell asleep, was awoken by a party somewhere in the building, complained to the hotel manager, and didn't report the accident for 9 hours. The passenger drowned. He got a 2-month sentence and even that was suspended. May or may not be well known, but the founder of Scientology and science fiction writer L. Ron Hubbard joined the military when he was a younger, and his military record has been much inflated by the church's members. In fact, Most of his military records indicate he was substandard, and instead of being blinded by an exploding bomb as he claimed, he was actually hospitalized due to an ulcer. Also of note, his wife and several other high-ranking members of the church were caught conspiring to infiltrate the IRS and destroy tax records for the church and use blackmail to gain influence in Congress. It was known as Operation Snow White. He was also a crappy science fiction author, at least until he made up Scientology. Eric Clapton went on a terribly sectarian rant at one of his concerts decades ago. Cole Malone impregnated a 13-year-old when he was a sophomore in college and refused to be a father to the child, who is now an NFL player. The New Zealand rugby player, Julian Savea, hugely talented young sportsman and cover star for anti-abuse charities, is currently on bail for beating the mother of his child. Didn't really want to believe it. Also, Jimmy Savile wasn't that great. Martin Luther King repeatedly cheated on his wife. Of course, this has no bearing on his career as an activist, but it tends to get covered up in the hero worship of the man. Multiple pieces of evidence have appeared that confirm this, such as memoirs by his friends and colleagues, and even declassified FBI records from when they were spying on him. Of course, this has no bearing on his career as an activist, except that his chosen career wasn't an activist, it was pastor, and adultery is a major no-no in the Bible. Shaun White is a total douche. Source: I went to high school with this giant douche. I could tell from that gum commercial. It is absurd to divide people into good and bad. People are either charming or tedious. Oscar Wilde. Thus spoke a very charming T. Andy Dong. It was fight night at an LA comedy club last week when Jon Lovitz roughed up Andy Dong over the murder of their Saturday Night Live colleague, Phil Hartman. Laugh Factory owner Jamie Marsada, who witnessed the assault, said, John picked Andy up by the head and smashed him into the bar 4 or 5 times, and blood started pouring out of his nose. Lovitz told Page 6, all the comedians are glad I did it because this guy isn't butthole. Censored word uncensored by me. Lovitz and Dong have been at loggerheads since a 1997 Christmas party at Hartman's house. 5 months before his troubled wife Bryn flipped out, fatally shooting Hartman, then killing herself. Andy was doing C, and he gave Bryn some after she had been sober for 10 years. Phil was furious about it, and then 5 months later he's dead, said Lovitz, adding that when he filled in on Hartman's news radio sitcom, I told Andy, I wouldn't be here now if you hadn't given Bryn that C. Last year, Lovitz related, a drunken Dong strolled up to his table at a go in West Hollywood, rudely downed his guest's peach liqueur drinks, and looked at me and said, I put the Phil Hartman hex on you, you're the next one to die. I said, what did you say? And he repeated it. I wanted to punch his face in, but I don't hit women. Till Jon Lovitz is a badass. There is a good chance that Martin Luther King plagiarized a good part of his thesis, and don't even get me started on Gandhi. MLK also cheated on his wife, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, and to the people saying it's not a big deal and it isn't a crime, you're right, it isn't a crime, but yes, it is a big deal. Marriage is an agreement to stay with the one person unless you both agree otherwise, and it can do a number to someone's ability to trust. Beethoven is a personal hero to me, but he was not a very nice person. He had a terrible relationship with his sister-in-law, calling her the queen of the night, and spent 10 years of his life trying to take her son Carl away from her. Eventually he was able to tarnish her reputation to the point where he got custody of Carl, and was a terrible and abusive father to the kid. Cole had to wear a truss for a testicular hernia and Beethoven would pull him by it when he was mad. Also, those 10 years where Beethoven was fighting for custody, he wrote almost no music, and this was between his middle and late period. Mankind lost a lot of immortal masterpieces during that time. Granted, most of those masterpieces probably would have been along the lines of Wheel. Cole's mom's a bee, she's a big fat bee, she's the biggest bee in the whole wide world. Maria Montessori refused to acknowledge to her own son that she was his mother. She barely had any contact with him. John Lennon beat his wife. He even wrote a song about it. In Getting Better he wrote, I used to be cruel to my woman. I beat her and kept her apart from the things that she loved. He wrote that line, didn't sing it. Big Bird has not once given Oscar money for food. Miles Davis was a woman beater and kind of a crazy sucker in general. As it happens, he also made very beautiful music. On one of the tracks on Live Evil you can hear a recording engineer ask Miles if this is going to be take 4 or 5. He says something like it's gonna be take 100. What difference does it make, mother? I knew he was a dong, but I'll laugh every time I hear it. It's not statistically proven yet, but it seems most men on British TV in the 1970s were physically shaming children or young women. If not that, they at least got a bit handsy. Laura Bush ran a stop sign and killed someone as a teenager. As long as it doesn't just turn into a load of unverifiable bulls about people Reddit hates already. Thomas Edison once killed and ate a guy just for asking him the time. Christopher Columbus was really not a good dude. Columbus was like King Midas, except everything he touched turned into a slave. Mr. Roger showers naked. Yes, I know he is dead. And IDC, if it ruins your childhood, we should all know the truth. I heard Rob Schneider goes down to Home Depot and pays migrant workers to go to his house and choke him in the shower. This is a terrible and accurate rumor. Brick killed a guy with a trident. Dewey Cox never once paid for drugs. Not once. Michael Jordan was a degenerate gambler. He's also rumored to be quite a dong. But his shirts don't get bacon neck. Lance Armstrong is actually a horrible litterbug. Bill Cosby is believed to be quite a philanderer and has been accused of gender harassment. I worked at one of the newspapers at Temple University and the editors were a virtual treasure trove of stories in which Cosby was either a class A jerk or trying to get zippity zab in some co-ed's flappity flip. While he was in Nevada, Johnny Cash murdered a man for no particular reason. Actually, I believe it was due to some sort of fetishized desire to observe the man's death. Retired Nihila Craig McTavish killed a 26-year-old woman while he was drunk. He was convicted of dangerous driving and only served a year. Funny how people with money can make things just go away. Martin Heidegger, the great German philosopher, author of Sein und Zeit, Being in Time, was a Nazi. He only regained some bits of his dignity when Jean-Paul Sartre started citing him and giving due praise for his rigid works of philosophy. He's a great philosopher, not necessarily a great person, though to be fair, his colleagues, students, and even his family were surprised with his decisions. On a related note, Nietzsche was not a Nazi and hated German fascists. Halle Berry was involved in more than one felony hit and runs. Let off with a slap on the wrist. B can't drive. Suzanne Sums is a horrible person. Yup, one night we were waiting for a Piaggio to land. Small plane, doesn't hold too many passengers, and not as extravagant as some of the private planes we are used to seeing. Anyway, in walks this older blonde woman with too much black eyeshadow on, wearing dark clothes. One of my co-workers, who fueled the planes, got excited and said that it was Suzanne Sums. I thought about the show step by step. Normally we don't speak to the passengers, especially if they are celebrities, unless of course they need something from us. That's our job. Anyway, this lineman's mother had just been diagnosed with breast cancer and began treatment. It had been a difficult road for him and his family, but since Suzanne Sums was so outspoken about breast cancer and had been diagnosed herself just a few years earlier, he approached her politely and asked if she could share some encouraging words to pass on to his mom. Sweet, right? She talked to him for a little bit, genuinely seemed concerned and hugged him, even offered to take a picture to show his mom. To me it seemed as though they shared a great conversation and all went well. She gets on the plane after it's fueled, and they all fly off on their merry way. Next day we show up to work and the boss is showing us an email he received. Turns out she called our corporate office to complain about being swarmed by workers for autographs and photos. Total BS. We had a staff meeting about how to treat celebrities and whatnot after that. The lineman who talked to her was obviously P, and from that day on, I'll always remember her as a fake B, : Obviously, I wasn't there and have no insight on this, but I have seen similar instances with some of our executives where you have what appears to be a good interaction but are then blindsided the next day by the complete opposite opinion. In my cases, it was somebody else who caused that issue, like a secretary, personal assistant, spouse, etc. Just a possibility anyways. Mr. Mosby from The Sweet Life killed someone in 1995-1991. Thanks, oh nostalgia, whilst drink driving. P.S. I'm guessing Hooch is crazy. Yet he always kept that vase from being knocked over. Einstein was kind of a perv. Come to think of it, so is Hawking. Gandhi beat his wife. At Yahtzee. Chevy Chase is a total dong. To everybody. Yeah, no, I met him, and he was a dong, but in sort of a funny way. I took it as his sense of humor, but who knows. You have been visited by the Wealth Rat. Subscribe in 12 seconds and he will share his wealth with you. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.